Welcome and thanks for being with us. Whether you are already married or you're desiring to be married, we trust God that you will have a great time. We trust God that we will have something of value to impart unto you so that you will have an excellent marriage, you and your spouse or you and your future spouse. So what's this about? It's all in the name. Things we wish we knew before we got married. And if you're like me, there's tons of things I wish I knew that would have saved me a lot of stress.
A lot of this.
Yeah, yeah. But you live and you learn. You grow, and so this is how this entire thing was born, on the back of that, wanting to to help others, and impart some wisdom, to share some knowledge from experience, so that others won't have to probably go through the same sort of stress. And if you are already married, um, and and then you somehow end up in the doghouse at times, hopefully, Bob, hopefully, this will help you not to be in the doghouse anymore. So we have today, it is my privilege today to welcome our senior pastor from Emmanuel Gateway Church, and his lovely, wonderful wife, Pastor Nick and Debbie Hughes. So they are our, we are going to be having a little discussion. So you are going to be eavesdropping really into our conversation, but it's all good. It's all good. And they are going to be we are going to be having a discussion, talking a bit of, things pertaining to marriage and what we wish we knew before we got married. And the topic for today, because as you know, it's over 4 weeks with 4 different couples. But today we are going to focus on love being a decision. Love being a decision. Oh, so this is my lovely wife, Lizette.
Hello.
What a say.
Yeah. So welcome everyone again, and well, Pastor Nick and Debbie, we would love to know your love story. On how did you meet? How did you feel? What was your first impression? Tell us everything. We want to know everything.
Okay. Well, we're really happy.
Everything in 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's a lot of years to squeeze down into a little time. Right. So you'll start. Yeah.
Oh, I'm starting.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been married now 30.
Go on, Deb. Come on.
5 years.
55 years.
Gone for 35 years.
Can't believe it.
Wow.
We actually courted. It's an old-fashioned word, but in those days it was the word. For 6 years. So we've been together 41 years.
Wow.
41, since we first started going out with one another. So it's been a long journey. But it doesn't feel that long. It really doesn't.
Oh, that's nice.
Like yesterday.
Yeah, that is
It
weird.
really does. We were both brought up in church. So I knew of Nick, although he was younger than me.
Still am.
And he was one of those annoying children.
Still am.
And then when we joined the youth group, I was in the older youth group, and what happened was I was the youngest in the older youth group. They all got married, so I turned around and joined the youth group coming up, of which Nick was a part of that. So where do I go from there?
So just be honest, darling. I want to know.
I decided I really liked Nick, and I set my heart on him, basically. And I won him because he was going out with somebody else at the time. But I didn't know, there was nothing untoward. I didn't encroach, and I've got more integrity than that. But when it came to an end, I made sure he knew how I felt. So, okay. In front of you.
Yeah, so I think a couple little things which may come out a bit later in terms of advice. So I remember us going away on a church conference. Some, if you're part of Assemblies of God, would know the national conference was an annual event held in the springtime, and we both were attending it that year. And we got involved in playing pranks on some of the other people there, just some jokes together. We were kind of the pranksters. So we weren't dating then. We just sort of struck up a bit of a friendship. Really, that was, see, as far as I was concerned, Debbie was an untouchable. Debbie was the pastor's daughter. She was one of 3 daughters, and they were held in lofty, high esteem, way beyond the likes of someone like me that could ever possibly aspire to. And you probably need to be aware that, you know, in her journey up until that point, she'd had 3 fairly serious proposals of marriage by guys that were much older than me, that had cars and wore long trousers and earned money. So, but there was this kind of aura, but I guess, yeah, just for our own journey's sake, I think, yeah, I was dating somebody, and that was coming to an end. She'd moved away, she'd taken up a nursing career, and the guy I was with, it just was one of those things naturally coming to an end. So I remember that coming to an end. To console myself, I went on holiday with my family to Barbados for 5 weeks. That was really nice. Okay, no, it was a family holiday that we planned, but pretty much over that time, I reflected on our friendship, and I came back wanting to ask Debbie out, and I wondered how that would go down. I didn't really know how she felt. You know what it's like, guys. The girls think they let you know, but it's still a big risk. It's a big risk to get out there, put yourself out there, and ask the question. You become incredibly vulnerable. You don't want them to say no. How do you be macho if you do? So, but the time came, and August Bank Holiday Monday in 1980, I plucked up the courage and asked Deb out on a date to Luton Airport, which is what we did the following week with some friends. And I guess then the rest is history, really. We dated for a long time. I don't really advise that. We were quite young. I was 17 turning 18. Debbie was 27 turning 28. So no, she wasn't. A couple of years between us, and so I was still quite young. I was just finishing off my studies and was getting a job, and so we kind of dated for a while.
We actually came close to splitting up.
Yeah.
In 1984, 5, we came close to splitting up. Really, I remember having the conversation. I was heartbroken, and so was he, because we just decided we needed to go our separate ways. But we'd booked a holiday with some friends. So we said, well, we've got to stay together while we go on holiday with these friends. So we went on holiday, and we just discovered the ability to laugh together again. Because we'd gone out for so long, we were like an old married couple with none of the fun side. Yeah. And so it became quite tedious. So yeah, we lost the romance, we lost everything. So, but we went on this holiday, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed, and realised that actually we had more, and that was all those years ago.
Well, we have something to show our audience before we move forward.
Can you all see the screen?
Can you all see your screen?
Oh my gosh.
1 second.
Sorry, guys.
Hold on, it's good. So from this one.
Can you see the screen?
Pastor Nick, can you see?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the young Pastor Nick and the young Debbie. You can still see the milk in the face.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's so nice.
Look at that. Look at that. That's just pure happiness there.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. Wow.
That's the wedding day.
Woo!
Awesome.
Wow.
Da, 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 da.
Beautiful
Da,
dress.
da, da, da.
Wow, it's a beautiful dress.
Ooh,
Look at that.
look at them.
Even younger. This, folks, this was 40 years ago.
Wow.
Deb's not changed a bit.
Come on to the Wow, very good. Okay, so that's the story there. So we wanna start going a little bit deeper now. So generally, for the most part, we know that the sort of the euphoric and the euphoria of the in love stage, it doesn't quite go the full distance for, I don't know, as long as you live into marriage. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, but what, according to the statistics and according to these the scientists, and they reckon that the euphoric love lasts generally about 3 years or so, 2 to 3 years or so. The sort of the little butterfly moments, the feeling where you can just look into each other's eyes for the whole day and the whole night, that type of euphoria all day long. So just a quick one. How long you reckon it lasted for you? Because this is going to be part of our discussion. How long you reckon it probably lasted? Let's go with Pastor Nick firstly.
Does it stop then?
Not. So
Yeah, I know. I just was thinking about the answer to that, Ronnie. So that's interesting, that 3-year thing. So, Debbie said something when we were dating, which I'm quite happy to be quite vulnerable about stuff, just so and honest. I think that could be helpful to some, but we were brought up with a tradition and a belief that we would be virgins before we were married. So Debbie and I never slept together before we were married, but we dated a long time. So that doesn't mean to say we're some kind of robots or that we didn't want to be intimate. Of course, we were young and passionate and human. And so that was really tough. And I think as much as we enjoyed sort of being around and did fun things together, and we were part of a great group of friends, I think that was a real stress for us. And so you end up sort of carving out a routine in a courtship with no purpose. And so when we got to that kind of year 5 of our courtship, and
butterflies have gone.
Because there was nothing that was stoking that. No intimacy, physical intimacy was stoking that. So I recognized that. And of course, once I'd realized, and I put it on me, I need to come to a point where I'm saying, hang on, I need to ask this woman to marry me.
Yeah.
That kind of re-engineered that whole, it was purpose and direction about our relationship again. And so, there was a whole, so I remember, you see, right at the very beginning, to this day, I still remember my first kiss with Deb. I can tell you where, when, I could probably work out the date. I can tell you the powerful sense of emotions that I felt when we first kissed in church. Don't tell Pastor Steve, whatever you do. So I remember that. And so then I remember when I asked her to marry me, just those emotions are very strong and powerful. And I knew we were going to be together. I knew that we were going to be intimate. That was just a very powerful driver. And of course, those first few years after marriage, we it was just us, and we were free just to enjoy each other and explore life. And they were wonderful feelings. I don't recall there ever being any time where butterflies. I mean,
they mature.
Butterflies
mature.
Yeah, they do.
Right. So it's not the same, but when I stop and think about it, my depth of feeling for Nick is deeper. Far deeper than it ever was than the butterflies, and it goes beyond butterflies.
Yes.
When you begin to think about, who you are as a couple, who you are as individuals, your married life, your intimacy, your family, what you've done, what you've achieved, where you're going. When you bring all of those things into it, your feelings for each other mature into something different and a lot more stable than butterflies.
Yeah.
Butterflies is just the romance as such. It changes. It changes.
Yeah.
And you can kill them off easily.
Yeah.
Quite easily. And you can let them die quite easily, but it takes,
So I was just going about to say, we want to go in a little bit deeper into that, Debbie, and I like where you're going with that. So if you put a pin on that for a second, because we want to come back there. That's a very important point you're making there.
The word mature.
Yes, the maturing of the love and not just the actual feeling. So we're going to come back to that. But so as we mentioned with the guest today, the topic being love being a decision, right? And not just a feeling, what we just discussed in there. So, so we have, of course, majority of us here, we are believers. Our life is based on scriptural principles. And the Bible talks about love in 1 Corinthians 13. And I want to ask a question after I read a couple of these verses. Now it says, love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous or proud. It's not boastful. It's not rude. Love doesn't keep a record of wrongs, etc., etc. So if the scripture gives us a sort of a guideline of what love is, being patient, being kind, being not proud or keeping a record of wrong, how do we reconcile this to our living? Because we don't always feel kind. We don't always feel patient. And dare I say, we sometimes keep a record of wrongs. Sometimes.
Yeah.
So you know, but we are talking about love being a decision to love.
Yeah.
So, Pastor Nick, you know, talk to us a bit about that. You know, the feeling versus the decision.
Yeah. So I think it's really important that we kind of quite forensic about defining what we mean by love, because I think our world pitches us what they think love is it shortchanges us in terms of our understanding. So it is very much pitched to the feeling of romance, about the rush of emotion, and because we have what's emerging today that, you know, when those feelings go, then maybe it's time to move on, to de-link, to find another partner, and the relationship is defined upon the intensity of feelings. And I mean, it gets me quite upset. And I guess I'm speaking from an age that I am now, and perhaps I wouldn't have really grasped this, you know, in my 20s, early 20s. I've had to really appreciate this. But I mean, the Bible talks about love being something that we give ourselves to somebody intentionally, and we commit ourselves to that person by making vows before God at the front of a church very often. When we say, you know, I will give my life to you. I think that's all downplayed into an area of just that's kind of nice ceremony, and the whole physicality of love is what's played up. And it's very easy for us to get swept along by that. And maybe that feeds into an answer to a question that will come a little bit later on. But of course, and I'm not setting one up against the other here. Love is very much in the romance and the physicality and the intimacy, and I celebrate that, but it's also in the decision making, the serving of one another, the choosing to forgive, and actually just choosing to be kind to one another. That's right. So I think when those butterfly moments go, we don't fall into the trap of saying, well, I've fallen out of love with that person now. I think actually Debbie and I are about to enter into a counselling arrangement with a couple where that is the cry right now. And we've got to address that very issue, because I think somebody's been seduced by something. Because the other side is those butterfly moments go, there has to come another choice about maintaining our romance, our intimacy too. And I remember somebody telling me that early on in our marriage, and I scratched my head, really think, no, I'll always feel like this for Deb. I'll always fancy her. I mean, it's never going to be hard to want to cuddle and kiss her and be into it. It's never going to be a second thought to that, you know. But actually, the older you get and the more life throws at you, there are times when you realize, actually, no, I need to choose to be spontaneous in my romantic relationship too. That's a choice too, because that's a responsibility I have as a husband to my wife, for her, not for me, just for me, but for her. So I do think that actually love is first and foremost a verb before it's a noun, a doing word before a feeling word. It must be that. And out of that doing comes feelings. And I think, you know, where people mess it up is they try and think, well, if I feel it, I'll do it. And if I stop feeling it, ergo, then I'm not going to bother. And that's where problems come. So I think you're saying that.
Yeah, I think if I look back, when I said that those feelings mature, they become a foundation for how you continue the rest of your married life. And I think Nick's right. You know, when you're first with somebody and you may be first married, and in those first few years, everything you do is out of that feeling of being in love and feeling. But as life crowds in, responsibility crowds in, difficulties crowd in, grief may come. There's all sorts of things that can come in, and it can squash those feelings dreadfully, because you don't actually feel anything else other than perhaps anger or resentment or grief or fear or stress. You have to be very, very intentional about digging deep and saying, actually, no. All right, we have a deep foundation here. We love each other, and we're going to choose to treat each other as if we love each other. And that comes out in your actions and your words. And I do believe that when you do that, you keep those things alive within you, so that when some of the stresses pass, when you've settled an argument, or when you've come to terms with other things, or life gets a bit better, you actually rediscover those, that they are there, and they've been there all along, and they've been sustaining you all along, but you just have to dig deep for them.
Yeah, I like, there's a few things there that I want to pick up on. I mean, firstly, feelings come and feelings go. We can't just rely on feelings. Yeah, we sometimes we don't always feel to go to work, but we make the decision to go to work. Especially when it's snowing, it's cold, or it's wet and rainy, and you want to just cuddle up under the duvet. We make a decision to do that, to go to work, because we know we need to get paid, or our boss is going to tell us off, or whatever it is. So we don't always feel like it, and that's why here Pastor Nick is also saying. But there comes a time when you have to, the verb, the doing word, you do. And I found that really interesting. But Debbie just mentioned something there at the end. What was it? What did she say? Slip me now. It'll come back to me. But it's oh, I don't remember. I once counseled somebody. Debbie mentioned about the feelings being there. It's deep or buried. I once talked with a couple, and the lady said she just doesn't feel anything. She's no longer in love with her husband, and she just wants to go. And it's not uncommon to hear something like that, you know, at times with certain couples. And when we delved a little bit deeper into some of the issues that were there, that were present, you then, for, you know, unbeknownst to her, and you know, with a pleasant surprise, she started to feel like how she used to feel before. But I said to her, wasn't that, or her words were like, you know, I think I'm falling in love with him again. And I said to her, the love really never left.
No.
Now, what happens in times when we have conflict and certain things are not addressed is the love just becomes buried by the clouds, so to speak. That's sort of the analogy I use. The cloud just blocked off the sunshine and the rays because the issues are not dealt with, or the situation is still ongoing. There's no restoration, there is no forgiveness, there is no repentance. So you find everything is just there. But when you start to work at it and dig a little bit deeper and do what we're talking about, love in spite of, and work at whatever the issue is, then you see the clouds begin to move away, and then you begin to see the love never left. You know,
I liken it unto a wall. okay, where you're very intimate together and those feelings of love are very strong, the feelings of intimacy, and even the butterflies are there. But as life goes on, things happen and we choose to lay down bricks. Okay, and what happens is we lay down bricks of resentment or unforgiveness or, you know, and if other things come in, but what happens is a wall comes up between you and you don't feel that love. All right, but that wall can come down. It can come down. Having said that, I do believe that in some relationships, there is such behavior that for some people, it does, and it can go way beyond. I don't want to say that it can't be made better because it can, but it really depends on those concerned whether they're ready or they prepared to lay down some of the stuff that's been going on and start again. Because there are some people in marriages where the hurt is deep, very deep. But I do believe that people can be restored, provided they're willing to change.
So, which, you know, pretty much marriage is, I mean, like one of my cousins and I, we talk fairly often about marriages and stuff like that, or marriage and so on. And I talk with her and I said to her, like, marriage is work. You have to work on your marriage, because if we come into marriage with the idea of, you know, well, I love her, she loves me, and we are going to get married and we're just going to live happily ever after, the end. It just doesn't happen quite like that. I mean, you guys are married for 35 years. You, of course, you have a good relationship, but that didn't come just like that, did it? You
had to make choices along the way.
Yeah.
So would you agree with that it takes focused effort, it takes work?
Yeah, I think I'd like to add something else just over the top of that. It does. I think with any relationship, there's a wonderfully romantic film that came out some years ago, which is brilliant and is a lie. And it's Jerry Maguire. Not Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise plays the part where he tries to get his wife back, his wife back. And there's a lovely scene in which he, in the middle of his sort of monologue, says, "You complete me." And it's wonderfully romantic, and I love the romance of it, but it's not true. That somewhere out there is somebody that completes you. See, that the idea behind that statement finds its way into Greek mythology that says that in the gods, the Greek gods, when they were being contended by humanity, cut men in half, and that became a man and a woman, and the quest of man came to be to find his other half, so that they would be complete again. That's the kind of the imagery that sits behind that statement. Right. So the lie that's fed into our world is there is just the right person, and then it's all okay. Once we're completed, we fit together, it's all easy. And can you see where this goes? So when somebody bumps into trouble with their relationship, the narrative in many people's minds is, well, this is the wrong person. I need to find the right person. So I'll say something that's contentious, but is not meant to be unloving. Could I have built a 40-year marriage with somebody other than Debbie, or could she have done that with somebody other than me? Yeah, probably. Likely. If we applied the same principles, I could have been with somebody else, Debbie could have been with somebody else. And, you know, if we put in the same measure of intentionality, those marriages would have lasted for 35 and 40 years too. So it's not about whether they fit you, it's about what you are prepared to give them. That's what builds a great marriage. What do you give away of yourself? What do you surrender of yourself? How much do you stand by your covenantal promise when you're married that says, I will? And actually, I would say, biblically, God has got it the right way round. Make a promise and then enjoy each other. Our society flips that round and says, we just need to check all the bases, which includes moving from different bases around each other's bodies first to see if it works. And if we can be physically okay, and if we don't fall out too much, and as long as we've got enough money in the bank, then I will say, I'll give you my life.
Yeah.
That is not, we didn't build it on we didn't build our relationship. And I know people have done that, and my close friends have done that, and I'm not trying to bring condemnation, but I am going to hold a candle to say there is method in saying, I'm going to speak my word that says, I'll do this. I'll commit myself to whatever comes. I'm committed to you, Debbie. That's what I say.
Yeah.
And then I have the right to enjoy her. She has the right to enjoy me. But when the hard times comes and we don't feel like being physically intimate, my word says, but I'm going to be. And I think that is a far more stable basis on which to build a long-term relationship than just saying, well, if it feels good, do it.
Yeah.
That is such a weak philosophy in life. You'll never do anything of any value if that's what you build your life on. And you certainly won't experience great long-term relationships. You'll be forever moving around. So I hope I hope you don't mind me being on that soapbox, but it's
no, that's fine. That's fine.
For us.
That's good. That's good. So I want to, because I think there was a couple of things that was said that I had my quotes there.
Okay.
So I want to just share some quotes, and you guys can probably take a snapshot if you want, or just take a read. A good marriage isn't something you find. This is what Pastor Nick was saying a while ago. It's something you make, and you have to keep on making it.
I can back that up with, as you go through life, things change. And because you've got it worked out now, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And tomorrow something can happen, which it might be unemployment, it might be the loss of a child, it might be the loss of a loved one, it might be you lose your house, it might be all sorts of things, okay? But you have to then start again.
Yeah.
You have to look at your relationship again and adapt. It's the whole time you go through life, for every situation, when you first get married, when you buy your first house, when you first have children, when you get, when you first get into debt, when all those things that come your way, you have to constantly be looking at your marriage and saying, how am I going to adapt now?
Yeah.
How am I going to adapt now? So you don't start off and just say, well, this is what we're going to do, and it works for the rest of your life. You have to adapt the whole time. Even now, as we're now moving into this house, which we hope will be our retirement home, things are very different. Children are not with us anymore. Grandchildren are not with us anymore. We're having to adapt to being on our own.
Yeah.
Which is something we've never been before. But we'll be all right. We'll make it.
It's going to be so great. I love it. Fantastic.
I like this one here very much. Make your marriage more awesome than your wedding.
Yes.
I think this one, if we apply the same energy, put in the same work
towards the party,
the wedding, the same, because we put so much effort into the wedding,
and details.
We go to the extreme. We have a friend. So much details. The woman, they will starve themselves to fit into that dress. Come what may, they will fit into that dress, and they're gonna not eat. They're hungry, but they're gonna fit that dress. We're gonna cut all the, make all the ends meet to get whatever we want. The building, the food, the drinks, everything must be perfect. We must have a perfect day. We'll spend all the money. If you want to get married in a castle, we have friends that wanted to get married in a castle and spend all these thousands of pounds just for one day. And according to this quote, if you make a marriage, if you seek to make your marriage more awesome than the wedding day, I think we can't go wrong with that. This one, stop saying that marriage is just a piece of paper. So is money, but you still get up every day and work hard for it.
Very good.
That's brilliant.
That's very good.
Yeah, I like this as well, you know. It speaks for itself, I think. A great man. Another one I think we spoke about. A great marriage is not when the perfect couple comes together. It's when an imperfect couple learns to enjoy their differences.
Very good.
We are very different in nature, very different in nature. And
Yeah.
somebody, when we first started going out, didn't think we would make it because of our differences in our nature. But here we are,
There's a few people that said that.
41 years later, and we've learnt, you know, we've both got strengths and weaknesses, we compensate each other's strengths and weaknesses. And we revel in each other's strengths and not in the weaknesses, but in each other's strengths.
A good marriage isn't something you find, Pastor Nick. It's something you make. Very good. Oh, so come on. So with that, so the next question then, we're gonna move on to the next question, which is, you know, in Genesis we see, Genesis chapter 2, it talked about God creating the man and the woman. He said it was good. For this cause a man shall leave father, mother, cleave unto his wife. They will be one flesh. He blessed marriages. So marriage is awesome. Marriage rocks. Marriage is good. Hebrews 13:4 tells us that marriage is honorable in all and the bed undefiled. So we know this is God's design. You know, Old Testament and New Testament sort of bigs up marriage. It is the first institution God created. Before government, before education, before all of that was a marriage institution. So my question is, what are we doing wrong in Christianity today? Of course, the world have its own way of doing things, and so we're not going to really touch that. But in-house, within Christianity, within the church, what seems to be going wrong, in your opinion, over the years with, you know, counseling and you know, experience? Because we see a high number of people also within the church just not having a good marriage. They are not really, they are struggling. They are not really, they're not really having an enjoyable, fulfilling marriage. But we know this is of God. So if the people of God are struggling with this, what's going on, you know? So what do you think about that, Pastor?
When you say pastor, you mean Debbie, don't you? That is a huge question, and I think all we could do is just throw in a couple of things to get you thinking. I have some thoughts about that, but I don't in any way claim to sort of think I've got the answer to that in any way. But you know, just my own observations. I'll just throw in, and if people want to comment on the chat or, you know, challenge it, by all means do that, engage in some way. Well, let's start off with something controversial. That's always good, isn't it? Okay.
Always good.
So I think if we're talking about in Western society, European society really, because I'm not so sure that we can make quite the same statements universally, because there are other nations, there are other cultures where what you said doesn't quite apply in the same way. So culture is and society's philosophies may have something to say about that. I think the role of a woman being brought to the front and the empowering and equality of women will have had something to say about this. Now, be very careful what I'm saying here. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm not saying that because of the equality of women, marriages have struggled. Therefore, what we are doing in society in terms of raising up the empowerment of women is a problem. I'm not saying that, okay? But I do think that society functioned in a certain way which kept the repression of women in a certain place, and so men could have goods and chattels and their little good woman at home all in their place, and you wouldn't see the breakup of marriages. It doesn't mean to say that the marriages were better then, they just weren't as visibly difficult and coming out, because it just wasn't allowed in the same way. So I think the way society has come out has empowered women to say, we're not going to be putting up with abuse. We're not going to be controlled. We actually are allowed to challenge some of these things. And I think it's taken men a generation or 7 to kind of adjust and change behavior to realize, no, we can't be controlling and bombastic and just because I say so, and treat their partners as if they're just their property. I think that is taking a generation or so to work out, how do we engage with a much fairer, equitable conversation as equals, which is how I think God made us, by the way, as equals. So I think that's a thing that society is grappling with. I think the things that I find hard to really accept, I think the whole arena of divorce has become much more accessible, more easy, and more trivialized. Marriage is being more trivialized in society in the name of there are other forms of relationships, other forms of acceptance. In the age of not discriminating against anybody, and that's the age we live in right now, we want to endorse everybody's behavior as being an okay behavior, because truth is only relative, it's not absolute anymore. And so, you know, we say, well, if you want to be married, that's great. If you want to be divorced, we're not going to be judgmental on you, which we shouldn't be, I know, but we're going to permit that. And so we have, you know, the situations where what comes with that is the baby in the bathwater syndrome. You know, well, if he looks at me bad 3 times in a week, I'm going to divorce him, and I'll take that to court and just claim, you know, that he's just, and it's become, in the courts, it feels like it's becoming trivialized. And so it's easy for people to go down. I'm not going to go through a resolution line. It's just easy to get a divorce because, and this is my third thing, because actually my happiness is paramount. And I think that is a thing that is absolutely insidious in society.
Yeah.
We worship the God of happiness. I must be happy at all costs, at the expense of everybody else's happiness. I'll let that go so far. But if it impinges upon my right to be happy, then it's my call over my life. And I think that leads to a selfish view. And if that encroaches into a relationship, well, if she's not making me happy, well, ultimately, I've got the get out of jail free card called an easy divorce. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not, please, I said at the start that I can't give all the answers. These are just little things that I think have become apparent in our society, which now seem to open up a floodgate that say, you know, we can do better on our own. It doesn't really affect the kids, you know, it will be okay. And society is continually ignoring the cost of breakdown in relationships, fractured families, the additional housing needs in society to house the increasingly separate population. That's just a very practical, but a very real cost to our economy. And well, it doesn't matter as long as you're happy. And I'm not so sure that I want to believe all the hype out there that it is better like that. And we live in a society that champions what's called a personality ethic. So a society that says, you know, if someone has charisma, they're worth listening to, you know. So we have celebrities commenting on all things, whether they're qualified or not, is that because they're celebrities, because we worship a personality ethic, and we worship a personality ethic at the expense of a character ethic. See, personality ethics can come and go. Character takes a lifetime to mold and shape, and it's built by making day by day incremental decisions that move you forward. You invited us here today, and we're speaking not because we're the best looking couple in the world. I mean, I think we are, but I know most of you disagree with that, okay? But because I happen to say one sermon Sunday that Debbie and I have been married for 35 years, and a lot of people's eyebrows went, wow, 35 years. Now, to me, that doesn't seem very long at all. We're not dead yet, so it's not a long time.
I'm hoping another 35.
Why not? You know, so
That'll make me 97 when I died, which is good.
And we're kids in the light of Howard and Kathy, who are tuned on right now. They've been married 417 years and they're still going strong.
Wow.
So for a long time, and a long time. But today, you know, try and go into a shop and buy a happy anniversary card for 30 years. There's not many on the shelf because they don't sell, because they aren't sought after.
Yeah.
Happy 10th anniversary. We were just getting going after 10 years. You know,
Yeah.
some people think, wow, that's well, you've done it. We applaud that for life. And it just amused me. So, this character ethic has to be something that drives us in their commitments to one another. And it sets up against this sort of triumph of my happiness over everything else.
For me, I think a wedding is on people's bucket list, all right, rather than a lifestyle choice. So they find a partner who they fall in love with, and the wedding becomes, part of the bucket list. It's something we should do to legalise what we may already be doing or we want to do, i.e. sleep together. So a wedding is there, and it's as easily broken as it is, as it is created. And the other thing is, I think people come into marriage believing that I am an individual person, I'm going to live with another individual person, and we're going to share the house and the finances and our bed, but don't interfere with my life. All right, as long as I can live my life, I'm happy, then we'll be fine. But that's not marriage, it's
Partnership.
It's partnership.
Yeah.
You know, you get that in the business world. Well, I'm not in the business with Nick, I'm married to you.
Yeah.
And marriage is completely different, because Nick said it earlier, marriage is about what you're going to give away. All right. Marriage, throughout of our life, I honestly believe that we've said, I will do what makes Nick happy. All right. I want him to be happy. So I will change my ways to make him happy. And he does the same for me, which means we win.
Yeah.
We win. By giving away, we win.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's more about a partnership.
I want to just underscore that last point Debbie was making there. I think you made it earlier on as well. You can't be selfish in marriage. If you just focus on you, or you just want to keep focusing on you, it's all about the you, marriage is not for you. And we are talking about things I wish I knew before marriage. I got married, and that's one of the things that I wish I knew, because it was only when we start living for each other, so to speak, and we start seeking each other's happiness, seeking each other's the fulfillment, and seeking to please one another, that's when we experience true fulfillment given to each other. And dare I say it, that is what God had ordained and had it in his mind when we, of course, from the scriptures, when he organized and arranged and created marriage. You cannot just be fulfilling yourself. It was meant to be a togetherness. You and me come together. You are given to me. Look, Jesus said, or rather, the Bible tells us in Ephesians, wives, honor your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. So it's a rather, and he continued, as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. And this is the pattern that we have as men. Firstly, just touch a little bit on the husband and wife, or the male and female. According to what we see in the scripture, we see a giving of ourselves. It's not husband just focus on you. You work hard, you buy your nice things, get your nice car, nice clothes. Wife, you just sort yourself out. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. And as Debbie said, we just live together. We share a house, but we are basically two separate individuals, separate lifestyle we live in. It's the Maker is saying, husband loved her as Christ himself loved the church. And how did he love her? He gave himself. It was a self-sacrificial type of love. And as we know, the central scripture, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. He gave. So love, again, we come back to the decision to give and not just to hoard or to keep. And as within marriage, you know, and as we continue to live, we found that the more we put each other first, is the more happy and fulfilled we feel. Am I right?
No, you're right.
Right?
Yes. I wanted to add as well something on what Debbie said on you know, living a separate lives. It could be on the, you know, it has to be a balance as well, because it could be on the other way, that you can, in the euphoric love or with the butterfly season stage, you can just forget about yourself, and then you start living the dreams, or you start living your life towards your husband, and you forget about you.
You get lost in your husband.
You get lost in your husband. You know, you forget who you are. You forget your dreams. You forget your goals, or because you just want to please your husband in every area, that you forget everything. And then I think that it's not right either, because then when you wake up to the, oh my gosh, I'm married, like, wow, then I don't know who I am anymore. So I'm lost. And then the other things that maybe in some other discussions can come up, you know, then the controlling will come and everything, because now I'm a slave of you, that I don't know who I am anymore.
So you want to give a testimony about that briefly?
Yeah, and I mean, that is exactly what happened to me. When I got married, I waited for so many years to get married that I had expectations, you know, when we don't know about this, you know, because I never been into marriage courses, because they said, if you're single, I mean, why do you have to go to a marriage course? And that's why I invited some people that are single in here, because it's really important to know these things before you marry. So when I got married, I just lost myself in my husband completely. I wanted to be with him 24/7. So I didn't want to watch TV. If he was reading a book, I wanted to be next to him reading a book. Even though my favorite program was on the TV at that moment, I would just wanted to be with him. So then I started like forgetting who I was. And then he made me realize, like, you don't have to be with me 24/7. You know, I wanted to be with him all the time. And then it was hard for me to understand. I just couldn't understand why he doesn't want to be with me. But then he says, it's not that I don't want to be with you. I love you, but I just need my time. You know, I need some time alone. And you need to do your things. Do your things. You know, if you want to watch TV, watch TV. But I used to feel uncomfortable watching
because she just was so absorbed in me.
The idea of being
the idea
married,
of, you know, so it's almost like you said, it's just, you're just so wrapped up in the person that you forget completely about you, who you are, your dreams, what your aspirations. I mean, when I met Liz, she was always in her courses and learning and growing and busy. Computer. And you know, she's evangelizing and she's winning the lost, she's Bible study, she is leading. And then we got married, and then it's like, but where's the person I married? She completely just stopped everything and was just there, just want to watch me, just want to just keep looking at me.
I want to be there.
All the time, 24/7, every day, sun up to sundown. So that took a lot of time, and you know, bit by bit, because you can't be too strong about that, because then she will feel bad and she will feel, you know. So I needed to be cautious. I was explaining to her that, you know, you don't go to the next extreme either, you know. So we are,
do your life and that's it.
Yeah, you are free. We are one, of course. We are one. We are married. We are united in, you know, in spirit and faith, goal, purpose in terms of the home and so on. But we are also individuals as well, where you can be free to take a walk with friends who invite you to go somewhere for a lunch or something. You don't have to say, well, no, I want to stay with my husband.
That's what happened to me. I didn't want to go out with anybody, with my friends or anybody. I just wanted to be with him. If somebody will invite me, I will feel, oh, I'm gonna miss 2 or 3 hours without him. So I went to the extreme, completely to the extreme, that when I realized, when he, of course, patiently, he's been teaching, he was teaching me on, the way that I should get my dreams again. One day I decided, okay, I'm gonna sit down on my computer. I just didn't know what to do. I had to remember, what was it that I liked? What was I doing? What was my project before I met him? What I used to do before him? That's when I realized. And then there's another point as well in that, just to add a little bit quickly, is to, of course, we have individual lives, we have individual goals and projects and everything, but then we need to find something in common, because I like all the computers and systems and courses about internet marketing. That is my world, but it's not his. So I can't force him to come to my world. Or he likes football, he likes news and talk about politics and different other things. I don't like that. So he can't force me to go in that world. But then we found a common thing, like, for example, the Bible study and discuss the word. We found the common thing on marriage, to know about marriage and all these things. So that is what it comes, as one. So now we have our project as both of us, and I have my internet marketing, and he has his own thing.
Yeah. So that was a biggie. That was a big one for us in our marriage to really work through. And thank God, we came out of it, and now she has her own thing going, and it's all good.
Yes.
Because let me say something right here now, ladies. The guy needs a little bit of space. He needs a little bit of space, to do his own thing as well. But yeah, just kidding. But so last point, before we entertain a couple of questions. I promise I didn't want to keep you all too long. In terms of conflict, there can't be a marriage without conflict. That's a myth. That doesn't happen. Whoever said they don't have conflict is not telling the truth.
What is conflict?
So, we want to hear Pastor Nick and Debbie, because we know you have a great relationship, but you would have had conflict. So, of course, conflict resolution plays a big part in marriage. So, what would be a couple, I don't know, 1 or 2 things in your earlier stage in marriage where you sort of like had a bit of conflict and handled it in a negative way, or not in the best way?
Yeah.
And then, I assume you would learn from that, and now you handle it in a better way, in a more positive way. What would that look like?
No, you start. So going back into our sort of early, it was hard for us. It was hard for us to think of specific scenarios because it's a long time ago, and we let stuff go. Stress in any scenario will be a sort of a start of a 10 for any kind of conflict, and I think early doors would have been money for us, or the lack of it. And I remember that taking us, me certainly, to the limit of stress, and really I didn't recognize myself in some of those scenes, and because Debbie would have caught the brunt of that, when I never would have hit her or anything like that, but when you raise your voice at somebody and it's coming out of that. So yeah, I think I think we also understand our personalities, though. We're not great confronters, either of us. Even with each other, we're not great at confronting. So I guess conflict where we've upset one another would go another way, and we would perhaps become passive aggressive towards each other, which is a much more challenging thing to deal with. So I'll say this in case it resonates with anybody, and I'm saying it because I know I'm guilty or have been guilty of this. Passive aggressive, when you've gone through sort of an upset that you haven't yet resolved, is we don't shout at each other because we're leaders of churches, so you're not allowed to do that. So of course we wouldn't do that because we can't point the finger at each other. Like, I'm not going to do that. So what you do, you have these micro withdrawals from one another. You just don't quite go the whole way to help out.
Yeah.
You're not as forthcoming with answers as perhaps you could be. They're micro passive aggressive moments. You're not as warm, and it's really annoying because when I try to do that with Deb, she notices it straight away. And I don't want her to really notice it. I want her to not really notice it, but feel uncomfortable. That's a passive aggressive move. And so, I would become what I thought was quite good at that. Well, because I didn't realize it wasn't a conscious thing in the early days, but, as I get older and I begin to reflect a little bit, I say, okay, that's what I'm doing, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen now. We're emotional creatures, aren't we? And we're exposed to stress, so things can happen. And I have to try and be aware that, my way of handling conflict would be to internalize a lot of that and sort of withdraw. The thing is, we do have a close relationship, so Debbie will detect that. Even if she can't put a finger on it, she'll say enough for me to realize she's kind of caught me out. And so then, for me, I have to go through this. Yeah, emotions are a really powerful thing, it's all nice tonight because we're all calm. We can talk rationally and it's like emotions are sort of locked away in the right box. You can handle it. But when those emotions are out and a bit raw and you're feeling upset and you don't have capacity to deal with it, you're angry, it's really hard. It's really hard to pull that whole thing down so that you can have an intelligent conversation with each other about conflict. It is so hard.
Yeah.
And if I haven't said it already, it's really hard. So, because it just gets in the way. And so it's really, really hard. So, are you hearing what I'm saying?
Really hard, I think it is.
Sometimes, and we've learned this from some of the courses we've taught, sometimes you do have to give yourself a little bit of space to allow those emotions to just settle back down again. So sometimes it's not always good to have a resolution to a conflict in the moment. Now, I know you're going to throw the Bible back at me and say, yeah, but doesn't it say in the Bible, don't let the sun go down on your anger? I don't believe that literally means the sun on a day. It's a metaphorical Hebrew idiom. It's saying, don't let time pass by without resolving something. Now, time may need to pass by so that you can resolve it, but don't ignore it. That's what the idiom is saying there, okay? Not, I must make sure I go and make a confession to my wife before 10 o'clock at night because the sun's gone down. If that were the case, I'm moving to Alaska for 6 months because the sun won't go down for 6 months and maybe I've got a chance for my emotions to calm down. So we've learned we've got to pick a moment, and sometimes we do need to sleep on it. And we do that. We let a day or so pass so that we become a bit more.
But we agree.
rational.
We agree on that. We recognise that it's not right. And we're open enough to say, we need to talk about this. We
Another
need to
time.
sort it.
Yeah.
Too cross, too angry, can't talk about it right now. Let's just sleep on it for a day or so. And then when you calm down a little bit, it's a lot easier to have a conversation about stuff.
But we can only say this to you because we haven't done that in the past. And we've kind of learned maybe we should do that in the future. No, I mean, at the beginning,
Yeah.
we didn't do that. And we've had, through painful times when we've
I remember one of the first biggest fights we ever had. All right, you'll laugh at this. So I was a good tennis player. So after we got married, I thought I'm going to teach Nick to play tennis because we can go and have some exercise. Well, he spent more time trying to emulate one of the Olympic champions with his service. All right, I just stood up the other end because every ball went into the net. We had the hugest fight you have ever heard, well, we've ever had. And actually, we've never played tennis since that day. Never. He said a few weeks ago, maybe we should try again. No. No. But we did learn, we learned a lot.
I don't know what she's complaining about. She won. 6 love, 6 love, 6 love. I mean, what's the deal?
I think conflict is very, it's hard. All I can say is, all right, there is nothing, or this is how I've worked. There is nothing more important to me than my relationship with Nick. So there is no battle I can win, or my way that I can get, or I can prove that I'm right if it's going to spoil my relationship with Nick. So that's how I operate. Okay. When we're more calm, we'll talk about very frankly about how we feel. You made me feel like this, or that is really important to me, or that's why I was so important. That's why this is so important, or why I want it done this way. And we'll have a rational conversation about it. And one of us tends to. So conflict is about nobody winning, all right, but finding a middle path which you're both happy with.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to get their own way.
Yeah.
All right, but you find a middle path that you're both happy with, and I think that's how we tended to work.
Okay. Cool.
That helped.
But even in the conflict, you still have to hold on to the fact you do not have the right to speak to the person any old how, or treat them any old how.
Yeah.
Kindness, patience, perseverance, long suffering, all of those things, love, all of those things still have to remain within your conflict.
So we don't allow ourselves to name call.
Or shout.
We don't allow ourselves to shout at each other. And I know some of this is, we have to understand personalities. So it's not one size fits all here in this sense. We have to work it out. But I know our natures. We don't shout, we don't scream. I've never screamed at our kids or shouted at them, and I've never done that to Deb. I would never want to do that. I just couldn't. And so there are lines that even in the midst of our darkest times will not cross. And I think it's important that couples work those out.
So would you say that was like specifically said, that line was drawn at the beginning verbally, or was it something just
the experience?
Just understood, like both of you just understood that we are not going to shout or think, because for some people.
No, go on, Ronnie.
No, I was going to say for some people, I fear they will probably need to hear like we will say like, this is the line. We are not going to cross this line. We are not going to shout and scream. If you think you are losing it, then let's just stop, and we will just reconvene later on or tomorrow or something.
Yeah, so I think for us, you've got to understand that in the last 40 years, marriage coaching, as I prefer perhaps it, that counselling sounds like you're leading heavily, and this doesn't always sit well with people, but coaching does. The whole thing of community has come on so far. Resources have been so powerful, so abundant. So we didn't really have available to us on the learning that we have now then. So we kind of moved, by the grace of God, by making some little mistakes, to these areas where we can both reflect and say that these are the lines. But here we have a forum, and we are going to put it out there because I think it is helpful for couples and prospective couples to have these honest conversations to say, you can't speak to me like that. Yeah, I've heard some couples speak to each other in terms that I think is outrageous. Christian couples, that I think is outrageous. I don't care what their personalities are at that point. I think, no, you do not call her that.
Yeah.
You do not put him down like that. Don't do that. Labeling each other, I think, don't undermine. Going back, there are some things that I would lay down now.
Yeah.
In any relationship, and if you're prospective, we would counsel couples along those lines. So you just make sure there are some no-go areas. And if one of you crosses it, it needs to be called out and say, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
You
Good shout. I like that.
And, I think we all agree that if it comes to physicality, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
There was a time not too long ago where that was just seen and turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
A guy could beat his wife up. And of course, all too often it happens today. It's not right. But we know it in society. No, we're calling that out. We're putting things in place from a legal point of view. That is not going to happen. We would all agree with that. I think there are other things in a relationship with our words. James talked about the power of our tongue. That can be equally as abusive, and we need to put lines in there. And remember, kindness must always undergird how we treat one another, even in the middle of an argument.
I like that. So we are just. I just seen we are like pretty much out of time for our bit. We want to just have this little last few minutes for some of the questions. So I want to just say firstly. For Kathy and their 49 years.
Hey, well done, Kathy.
Yep. Somebody get the medal ready.
Come on.
And then, so Tony said, happiness is the key and understanding. Martin King Vito in the building, he says, in the case of a person ignoring you for 3 days or never returning to the conversation, because some people, depending on how they grew up, don't believe in reconciliation and would rather act like it didn't happen. So I guess like just ignore it, put your head down in the sand, and hopefully it will go away when I get back up. And we know that doesn't happen. That doesn't help. It stays there. You're still there, and So we want to open up for a few questions. Should we? What's the easiest way? Okay. So guys,
unmute yourself.
You can unmute yourself now.
If you have any questions.
And if you have any questions based on what was said, you can have the floor. And if you remember to keep it brief, so we can
get lots in.
Yeah, get lots in as much as possible.
Hi guys, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it is I, King Vito. It is I. So first of all, thank you so much for setting up this conversation forum, and just hearing the I guess the wisdom that is being shared is it's not only eye-opening, but I guess it's also paving the way forward, because when you hear of people whose relationships have lasted so long, it gives you something to aim for. So thank you for offering us up hope in this area. I think the question I was asking was related to this idea of how people deal with offenses, because sometimes I think what gets people to their tether or their maximum limit is not necessarily dealing with the issues, not necessarily head on, because Pastor Nick, you mentioned that. Sorry, excuse me, son. Shh. Thank you. You mentioned that it takes you and Pastor Debbie don't necessarily have to resolve your issue immediately, but at the same time, there are people who then take it to the extreme end of saying, well, in quotes, if I said something about it once, I don't need to talk about it again. I was now talking about the people who've grown up not actually having to confront issues and then kind of getting away with, passive aggressive behavior or challenges like that. And it's like, well, how do you deal with it from that perspective? Disclaimer, I'm not talking about my wife, but I'm just, because of stuff that I've encountered even when we've sat down to talk to couples and stuff like that. So it's just thinking about how if the habits that you grew up with are not good or conducive for the marriage that you want, how do you address those habits while simultaneously dealing with the offenses? Does that kind of make sense? What do you prioritize? Do I prioritize dealing with the offense, or do I prioritize dealing with the habit? Because the habit can be as corrosive as the offense.
Yes. I think more so. So, did you want us to answer that, Ronnie, or did you want
If you just briefly answer that one and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do hit an important point, Martin, that actually the habit, I think, is more corrosive. When somebody loses somebody, grief settles in. If that's not dealt with, okay, what people do is internalize grief. And then when they encounter grief later on in life, what happens is the unresolved emotion in the heart of grief that's not been actually worked through before begins to resonate with the new grief, and it becomes a more unbearable scenario. And I say that all to say, I think the same happens here. That if people bury away hurt because of not wanting to talk about it, they haven't dealt with it. All it does is it sits inside the heart until another scenario arises. And then what happens is what has been left undone before, it amplifies the moment. Now, I would want to talk to any couple, any person like that, and say, it's not healthy for us to just not confront these things. It may require some space to gather ourselves, but there needs to be a forum, a trusting context in a relationship says we do need to at least talk about these things in a safe environment. And like you, Martin, I've encountered couples where that has been a real difficulty, and they've need somebody else in the room to help umpire or navigate that. So I think it's not, I accept that, people are brought up in scenarios at home and they can bring that. We all bring our stuff into a married relationship. It doesn't mean to say that things stay there. And it's not an excuse to say that's the way I was brought up, so that's the way I am. It's not an excuse.
That's
because
not building a marriage.
Marriage is an opportunity to make some adjustments that help us corporately live better where we've not done so well before in our past. I think that's a fantastic God-given opportunity where living with someone that we love, we're becoming more vulnerable with than we ever were with our parents. It's a different relationship, actually allows us to create a forum whereby these kinds of conversations that cut very deeply can be engaged with, and we help one another shape these things in a better way. So when it comes to resolution of conflict, it's not acceptable. Now, a couple has to be willing to engage with the process. And if they say, well, we're just not going to do that, then there's not a lot more you can do, depending on the level of relationship you have with them, but mark my words, the crisis will come. It will happen, and it will be a make or break moment. And I only say that because I have personally had to go through numbers of relationship crises with people, some very close friends, where what you have said, Martin, was their story, and today they're on their third marriage and a different set of kids again. And out of church, they were ministers, out of calling, and just living a life.
This is the part of marriage that people don't think about. They think about the wedding, they think about setting up home, they think about having children, they think about sleeping together and being intimate, they think about the life that they're going to build. But these are building blocks, really, foundation stones that really do have to be dealt with. And sadly, there's not enough coaching in this area for new couples, really, that are getting married. There's a saying that says you never bury an emotion dead. It's always alive. It will always come back to bite you. And so to help people understand where they're going into, and we've done a lot of pre-marriage for people, and we see their eyes looking at us, and we're talking about how to deal with conflict and about how they're going to bring stuff into their marriage from their past and what that's going to affect. And they look at you as if to say, sorry, are you talking to me? No, it's not going to be me. We love each other. We're not like that. So it's not something you can teach people before they're married. It's only when they get into it.
I think you're right. You probably can't necessarily teach them, or rather, they can't really understand it until they're in it. However, at the same time, we want to at least get them forewarned to be forearmed. So when they reach in it, then they know, we have a tool here. We listened to this, we read this, we attended this conference, and we heard this and that. And so now we are in it. Now we can apply what we have learned. Very good question, Martin. Thanks so much for that. Any other question? Oh, I think is that Kathy's hat? No. Oh, sorry. Any other question before we? Right. So before I'm gonna put Kathy on the spot here now, because she's been married the longest, you know, 49 years. We have to hear some sort of pearl, some wisdom here from this couple. So Kathy, you have 3 minutes to give us a pearl of wisdom. Really? You and your husband. Sorry, I didn't catch. Sorry, what's your husband's name again?
Howard.
Howard and Kathy. Go ahead. The floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Well, he seems to be keeping quiet, so I can speak, right? Well, for me, we didn't have any counseling, and certainly coming into marriage was never I was never thinking of marriage. I can assure you of that. I was going to be a missionary, and it was events in my life when I lost my father suddenly, and I often say I was looking for a father figure. Right. That's how I looked. But I didn't know anything in marriage, but I had to learn. And terribly fast too, you know. So in essence, there's a lot of give and take along the journey. Yeah. And I'd never sit here and say to you that there wasn't times that I felt to give up. Yes, I did. Yeah. You know, but I looked back and saw that my parents, they divorced, and I've always said to myself, I would never allow my children not to be with mom and dad. Yeah. And that was a driver for me more than anything else. And of course, God bless my husband's mom. She was like a real mother to me. Yeah. You know? And that replaced a lot of what I didn't have, right, having lost my dad. You know, so yes. The give and take there, you know, you that's win some, you lose some, you That's right. You won't always win, but at the end of the day, you know, we're not going to fall out of this union. Yeah. To make sure that we were good mentors for our children, even if they don't follow in our pathway. Yeah, definitely. They can say they've never seen us quarreling, they've never seen us fighting or anything like that. You know, all the things that the children will hold on to. Yeah. They've always seen us praying or whatever is good. So, very good. Oh, yes, okay. That's why we're still in it. Excellent. I'm still willing to give him up now. Excellent. So, well, we want to just put a book. We just have a book, a resource here that we can share. I think there's two books. No, it's one. Or the other one. Yeah, but the other one, the language one. Okay, so you can see here the 4 laws of language, and this is a really, you know, we recommend this book. It's the author is a pastor, and he constantly speaks on marriage. Jimmy Evans. We follow him, we listen to him. Some of his stuff is really good. Okay, so my technical guru here is telling me she doesn't have the other picture on the screen, so I have to use my phone. And you can take a note of it, which is another excellent author, Gary Chapman.
And this is the 5 love languages of apology. Very, very awesome pastor, counselor.
Yes, apology.
Yeah, and he wrote the best-selling book, The 5 Love Languages, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout the course of the week. So it's in the link, one of them, and my guru will do the rest. So
Okay.
So guys, we want to say a great big thank you for being with us or spending your Wednesday evening with us on things I wish I knew before I got married. I think someone made a comment here. Just that. Chidi, marriage seminars and premarital sessions with my pastor really helped me. Very good. It's so needed. And I think, was it pastor that says it just not, or Debbie, we don't have enough of it, you know, and we definitely need, because it's very valuable. So just to remind you all, for the next 3 Wednesdays, we have different speakers and we'll be dealing with different topics. And Pastor Nick and Debbie set the bar here now.
Thank you.
They set the bar here now. So guys, thank you so much, Pastor. You know, pastors, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your pearls. Thank you for your time to pour into the flock from near and far. You know, we have from the United States, New York, Baltimore. You know, thank you so much for being with us here this evening.
Worldwide. Indeed.
So the next session is dealing with finances. Another biggie. Finances.
Very true.
Well, money. Oh my gosh. You don't want to miss that one.
Yeah.